So right in front of me, I have a brand new product from Acer. It's a beautiful laptop. In fact, it's probably the most beautiful Acer product I've reviewed this year. It's called the Swift Edge. It's a 16-inch thin and light notebook. It's 2.54 pounds, which makes it a lighter laptop than the LG Gram, which I just reviewed a week ago. And it's on the same level as the Galaxy Book in terms of thinness. In fact, I actually prefer the look of this over the LG Gram. It's just like a simple black color with the Acer logo at the top. The weird thing is, even though it's using a magnesium alloy, just like the Gram, the type of coating they're using on this laptop makes it feel more like metal than the Gram. Like when I touch the Gram, it's using magnesium alloy as well. It just feels a bit more plasticky. As you can see here, it's also thinner. And of course, it has a very similar amount of I/O, but with the Gram, you get a micro SD card slot, whereas on the Swift Edge, you don't. Because this is using an AMD processor, you have Type-C ports, but they don't support Thunderbolt. You have a USB port, HDMI, which is HDMI 2.1, and then on the right-hand side, you have your Noble Lock, USB port, and an audio jack. The cool thing is, on the Gram, the top of the lid was super squishy. On the Swift Edge, it's actually pretty solid. You can open up the laptop with one hand, which is never a problem. The wobble on the display is actually pretty good. You can't lean it 180 degrees. It kind of stops right here, which is very typical for a clamshell laptop. Keyboard layout is nicely spaced. The touchpad, which is made out of glass, is directly in the middle. But the biggest problem with this laptop is how squishy this keyboard deck is. There's like zero rigidity on this keyboard deck. It doesn't matter where you press on this thing. Look at this. Look how much this goes inwards when I press on it. I could literally throw my kid on here and he'll go through the roof. In fact, it's so bad. Even when you're typing normally, you can see the keyboard go inwards. So if you're like a maniac and you type really hard, like this thing is gonna bounce all over the place. Like, don't get me wrong, like a lot of keyboards are squishy and usually it's not that big of a deal, but this is on another level and has me kind of worried for the future. As for sticker placement, the guy who put it on this laptop obviously went to a rave, got a little excited and slapped stickers everywhere. There's even a fingerprint scanner at the top right, which is weird because the fingerprint scanner is embedded into the power button. The star of the show though is actually this display. This is a beautiful, and I mean gorgeous, 4K plus OLED display. The colors are absolutely vibrant. It's kind of a glossy screen, but there's a lot of anti-reflective material inside of here, so the light doesn't bounce all over the place, and you do get really good color accuracy, high contrast ratios, and obviously a good color gamut. The only downfall to this display, and this goes for most OLED displays, is that under 50% brightness, you do get a bit of PWM flicker. Webcam at the top is 1080p. It's much better than previous 720p Acer webcams, but it doesn't have an infrared sensor for facial recognition. Now, Acer has decided to go with an AMD processor, and it's using a Ryzen 7 6800U with an integrated 6800M GPU. It has 16 gigabytes of RAM and a 1 terabyte NVMe SSD. The price is really good. In fact, it actually undercuts the LG Gram 16, and performance is slightly better. This AMD CPU with its 6 nanometer architecture really does get good multi-core speeds and beats out some of the i7U processors from Intel. Single core clock speeds are a little bit lower just because AMD is behind in that regard, but when you're using certain applications like compiling code, this is going to beat out the Gram that I tested a week ago. When it comes to creative applications, it does okay in Photoshop, and it actually does pretty decently in Adobe Premiere Pro. Like, by no means this is a video editing machine, but just like the Gram, it's really geared towards office productivity. Like, you buy this thing for the big screen, for the lightness, for the portability, and you use it for office work. Tons of tabs open for school, right? That's what you want this for. It's not like a video editing machine or gaming beast. There is some fan noise. The fans do kick on quite frequently, but it never gets louder than 45 decibels, but you can switch the profile to better efficiency and you get the fan noise down below 40. In terms of heat management, nothing to complain about either. It does a very good job of keeping the temps in line. Now there's two speakers on the bottom, but they don't sound that great. They don't get that loud and they're very tinny. I think because they place them so far up in the middle, it doesn't have enough space for them to breathe. With most other bottom firing speakers on laptops, they're a lot closer to the front. Now internally, not a lot is upgradable. Like you can swap out the NVMe SSD. This one happens to be 1 terabyte and it gets really good read and write speeds. Swappable Wi-Fi 6E card, but you do have a second slot right under this ribbon cable if you want to add a second drive. You have a 54 watt-hour battery, which is smaller than the 80 watt-hour battery in the Gram, but because this is using an AMD processor and not an Intel one, you're getting really good battery life, 8 hours and 44 minutes before needing to charge. And that's with a 4K OLED display. Honestly, it's a beautiful laptop. I love this thing. It has good battery life. It performs better than the LG Gram 16, and the display is obviously nicer. But the one thing that has me really concerned is the deck of the keyboard. You know, like don't get me wrong, the Gram is a bit squishy as well. But when you type normally on the Gram, the entire deck of the keyboard doesn't go in. On this guy, it doesn't matter how light your press is, it just moves down. And that has me kind of scared for the long term. Like it just needs a bit more reinforcement. Anyways, it's your call, guys. You know, like I think for the price, there's a lot to love here, but there's also a couple of concerns. Like the video if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't already. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next one.